All right, so we're going to take a look at your evidence. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about what do you see from your students' evidence?
All right, so first let me share with you my intended outcome, right? So I wanted them to take multiple sources and apply them to character development in Lord of the Flies. Right, so we meet these characters in chapter 1, and I wanted them, use again multiple sources and analyze and explore character development. That was a focus. So what I noticed is that students, their comprehension is where it needs to be. They understand the, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. They know what that is, and they know the different components. They read an article, and they were able to identify, the main idea. They were able to summarize, the key points, and most of them, I would say, got to the author's argument, like the reason he wrote the article. So then, using that information, I wanted to apply that knowledge to Lord of the Flies. So what I noticed is that students are they're easily meeting, the DOK level 1 and 2, right, which a lot of it is just recall and comprehension. So they're getting there, where I feel that they are struggling quite a bit is, for example, they're able to apply their knowledge to, Ralph and Piggy, which we get a lot of information about Ralph and Piggy, and they're able to go back to the book and find, key quotes, and they're able to understand the characters, and they're able to apply, the article that we read, the information there, and Maslow's hierarchy of needs. They're able to connect that to Ralph and Piggy. Where they're struggling is when they get to Jack, for example. They don't have a lot of information on Jack, where they have to make a lot of inferences and draw conclusions on their own. I feel that's where the majority of the class struggled. And again, the questions were built in order from 1, 2, and 3 to eventually help them get to a level 4, which is like, okay, now take all of this information and write a IEA style paragraph, right, where you draw conclusions, you make inferences about, any character or any of the 3 characters. So I feel most of them were able to get to the 1 and 2. Some of them even started knocking on 3's door, but once I asked them, like, okay, make some inferences using the other sources, that's where they struggled. But I did have a student who was able to get to the 3 and completely, he nailed it. He got the question correct. He started writing down his ideas for the level 4, but his structure and the way he organized his paragraph, it can definitely be improved. But all the ideas are there. Like he's able to transfer the ideas and concepts from the other sources and apply them to Lord of the Flies. He's able to do that, but his structure is, where he needs some improvement.
And so you're telling me your students don't know Jack?
Yeah, they don't know Jack.
Okay.
You're absolutely correct.
Well, what is some evidence to prove that your students don't know Jack?
So again, Jack, Jack the character, right? So they have Jack, and we, I even pointed to them, like, you can find Jack on pages, started on page 19, but he's a very ambiguous character to a certain extent, at least in chapter 1. So when I said, okay, the question is, according to the hierarchy, what does Jack have the least of? Students were like, I don't know, right? Because they were, this is where they make an inference.
Yeah, because Piggy's such a great character, and he's the one I really know.
Yeah, he's very, students are very drawn to Ralph and Piggy because they're the most developed, at least in chapter 1. But Jack is not as developed, at least not yet, right? So then they struggle with that a little bit. So they, in a sense, they don't know Jack. You're absolutely right.
Okay. So you focused on this student here. What evidence do you see from the other students, the ones here, that you have about their challenges and struggles that they have?
All right. So again, the student here was able to answer all these questions correctly, right? So these are level 1, level 2, and then 3. And then when she got to the one where she gets to meet Jack. She identified exactly what I was looking for, but she's not able to cite evidence from either source.
That's
right?
good.
And this person here was just, stumped. It's like, I don't know Jack. And I need to figure out, what do I even say about him? Because I don't know him.
Well, That's great. Well, I think we're going to move on to our discussion here. So here's what I want us to do is to ask, we'll go around the room here. So Renee, what do you think you see in here? What are some problems and challenges that we need to prioritize?
There's different challenges. Obviously, this kid can't organize, completes a paragraph, and can't find a way to link, like he was saying, the 3 articles and cite evidence in those 3 articles. So that's his challenge. So the level 4 is a challenge for all of them, but he's at least getting started there. And I believe everybody else, like you were saying earlier, are having just a hard time connecting the ideas with each other from like the article you gave them, the book, which was just chapter 1, right? And then making predictions of where this is going. So like we're just having, I guess, organization too. Like that's there, that's here. In general.
Yeah, I agree. I noticed on the notes too that you were saying that they're having difficulty with other sources and transferring that knowledge into their paragraphs. So I think that's one of the challenges too, is they have the information, but how do they make it into their writing and connect it and weave it? And I do think that you set up the structures for the students to do that. It's just, I guess it's not as clear to them as it could be. You know, like you are presenting all the information for them and you want them to make the connections themselves, but what's a way we can make sure we get that information that's being presented and transfer it into their writing? So I agree with what you said, Renee, about organizing, especially with a student who was successful. They need a little bit of tweaking to make it better. And this one here was talking a little bit more about transferring ideas. So like they all have the knowledge, like the basic comprehension, but how do we get that basic level to the next level where they're synthesizing and doing the character traits with the characters from the story, like Piggy or Ralph or Jack, if you will. So now, I guess the next step is what do you think? What do you think about the challenges there? Would you agree with what we said about the challenges?
Yes, I agree.
Okay. So then, I guess the next thing is to talk about the steps. So what do you think, if we're going to talk about organizations or transferring, which challenge would you want to start with now?
I would start off with transferring and then move into organization.
Okay. So then, so when you're talking about transferring knowledge and information, I guess the next step we're going to do is just come up with what's an effective step to get them better at this the next time. So what do you think would be a good strategy to get them to transfer this stuff here? Step 1.
So step 1, I think, since eventually we're going to get into organization, something that I was thinking of doing is, for example, giving them a claim or an argument, right? Like this is, you know, your thesis statement, if you will, and then having create a tree map, right? So this is your thesis. And now that you have, you know, for example, the thesis could be simply the article's central idea or argument. Now, what I need you to do is just find quotes from either Lord of the Flies or even the article itself to support that thesis. And just give me the quotes. You don't even have to explain them yet. Like all I want you to do is find quotes from the book and the article, and then by finding, you know, quotes from the article and the book, they're able to see like, oh, these ideas are connected. Like, you know, I can support this claim with evidence from multiple texts, not just one text. Even though the idea came from one text, you know, I could use other sources to support my idea. So then even that basic organizer will help them see like, oh, these are all connected in a way.
So I like what you're saying. So you're like creating a scaffold, and eventually you can take that scaffold away. So then would the next step be to try to do this same process again without that tree and see if they can replicate it?
So what I like about this tree here is that, one, I'm just giving them a way to brainstorm. So this is just brainstorming. You know, I don't give them an organizer with the tree drawn. They have to draw themselves. So whenever they do find themselves in a situation where they have to, you know, write something, they're able to use this tree because it's like, oh, it's easy to draw. Let me just go ahead and draw it, and this is what I learned.
They can do that on tests.
So they could do it on a test, you know, or any sort of thing that they're working on. But this is just to help them organize their ideas, you know, leading into the organization piece.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Okay, well, so in terms of the steps, so it would just be having that claim or argument tree map scaffold. Would there be any other steps after that?
Definitely the modeling, right? So I have
I think
this.
we have modeling, okay, and then I think Renee has something too.
Yeah, I was just thinking like, so you're gonna model the tree map, how to write a thesis on top, and then model how to find quotes
Yeah.
to support that thesis, right? And then
Mhm.
from there, are you gonna have them also write how that quote, the analysis part where they talk about the quote and how it connects to the thesis in their own, like, you know, how you, that, what is that part, the A part, right? Or the-
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I like that. So then, quote, 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 and then maybe down here, it's still kind of part of the tree. It's like explain
Like
why
further
you
down.
chose.
Yeah, and then it
those
helps
three
in their
quotes.
transferring of ideas.
And
stuff.
then that could be lead into their analysis, right? So then it's like, you know, using, sum up, like why did you choose those three quotes or those two quotes, you know, if I model and then it's like find two on your own, one from the text, one from the article, then explain to me why you chose those, so what do they have to do with the
Would
thesis?
you also consider like maybe doing like one where it already gives them a thesis and they just gotta find now quotes to support someone else's, like a hypothetical student's thesis? Or would you just want them to work on their own? Just kind of like a stepping stone for them to see like how do I find something that supports this?
Yeah,
What
so
is this
the
here?
first step would be I give them the thesis, and then they just support it. With,
Okay.
yeah, so I'm
With
drawing, you know, like you said, like a hypothetical student, but I am giving them, the first step is to give them the actual thesis.
Mhm.
Then eventually it's like, okay, you need to draw your own conclusions. But
Okay.
for this round, I'm giving you the conclusion.
Mhm.
So are you gonna do this characterization thing again while they read the book, or is it gonna be like a different thing? Like, I notice you're using characters, but is this interchangeable with something else they're gonna write later? Because I know you can only talk about characters, so is this something
Yeah.
you're gonna revisit later?
So we'll definitely revisit, not to this, you know, not this much, but then we're gonna get into symbols next, and then also
Okay.
characterization is gonna come up again with symbolism, because it's like, you know, for different characters, these different symbols are gonna mean very different things, and we can go back to this and say, well, why is that? You know, so this is something that we could bring up, but again, it's not gonna be like.
But then at the same time, you could still have the same activity where they create a tree map with the symbols on here, like the same levels of
Yeah.
knowledge. Like, what symbols do you see in the book? And then moving on to the next part, you're going to be going back and having a similar kind of setup. I can see where it's basically like choose one of the symbols and, you know, how it influences the story itself. You know, like that same kind of question. And then you can use these structures for the next activity you do on that.
Yeah.
All right. Now, I think we have to come to a consensus. Do we like these suggestions for this? I mean, we're supposed to do a consensus for the next steps. Is everyone okay with these ideas? Anyone object?
I think it's good because I mean I like how they're how you're just building it up. You're not just saying write your own thesis, fill this out. Like it's like building them there, give them the stepping stones.
I wonder even if, so for example, now that we mentioned this, right, so for the next, let's say we revisit this assessment again, instead of giving them a question, you know, just giving everyone, like, here's a claim, work with this claim as a, you know, as a stepping stone, and eventually turn those claims into questions and have them generate their own.
So, like, for example, like, instead of this question, you would just say, you know, Ralph's, I guess, how would you say, what is, if you're going to predict,
So that's
if you, let's say we just pick Ralph,
Okay.
like, how would you change that into a claim then? Like,
So let's say, for example, many students focused on, you know, Ralph is, at first they were calling him lazy. Ralph's lazy. Like, he just, you know, he's swimming and he doesn't worry about much. And it's like, okay, how about we turn that into Ralph is carefree, right? So then it could be like Ralph's carefree nature will have a negative effect on his chances of survival or something.
That's great.
So-
And then they can say agree or disagree. And so once they have a position, it makes it easier to use evidence to support that from
Yeah.
the different articles. Yeah, I in my class I do that a lot. It's usually a position. It's like, do you like this or do you not? And kids typically like it when there's a clear-cut answer.
Mhm.
So it's like yes, no, and they write better for it because there's, I don't know. I guess it's less ambiguous. You directed them
Yeah.
more.
It's
But
more
it-
direction.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, I
So
guess.
again, and then slowly, possibly, you'll start moving away from that. Or even like, how do you draw? You know, like, how do you make your own conclusion based on like a question?
Right.
Because, but yeah, that's like, that could be practice with claims, and then slowly start moving into, you know, questions, especially since they'll be taking like the EAP, and then some of them are pre-AP, and they're gonna move into those AP therapy classes where they're just giving questions.
Yeah, and I think it could work out. I mean, your next time you're gonna do it with symbols, you could come up with a claim with like, you know, what is the whatever the pig's head. I don't know. That symbol always pops out of my mind. Like, yeah, yeah. Like, why does that? Like, I don't know how to do a claim on that, but that's just crazy. All right, well, this is amazing. You know, I just want to say, do we all like this next step? If you like it, raise your hand and say, yes, I do. A thumbs up? Okay, thumbs up.
Yes, I do.
This is amazing. I'm so glad we reflected on this data together. I feel like we've grown in our teaching habits, and I feel so much better having shared this time with you.
Thank you, sir.
Now it's my turn. So let's